Okay, Aquarius Rising, in about 18 months, you might understand what this video was really about. I'm Sook Boy. You're awesome. Let's talk about it. Think back to the time period of your life between 2007 and 2009. This was the last time that the North Node moved into your first house of Aquarius and the South Node moved into your seventh house of Leo. If you can remember that time period in your life, you have an opportunity to witness the repetition of a particular pattern. Now, I'm not saying you will live through the exact same circumstances, but you can anchor yourself in some context or particularly a clue about what the next 18 months might mean for you. Now, the nodes shifting into this area of the chart is significant because over the next 18 months or so, this is where you will experience the majority of eclipses. And eclipses are usually significant because they're symbolic of major endings and major beginnings. Now, this is the relationship axis, the first and the seventh house. So we have to think about our more important relationships, romantic, business, platonic, or otherwise. Now, I'm Aquarius Rising, so I can actually give you a real-world example. Now, the seventh house is the house of the other, sure, all your important relationships, but it's also the agreements you have with those relationships. So sometimes it can actually mean legal matters like contracts. And back between 2007 and 2009 is when I actually signed my first recording contract with a record label. Now, this was rather rewarding yet unfamiliar for my identity, and that's exactly the function of the North Node. When the North Node moves into your first house represents you, your identity, how you interface with the world in real time, how you show up in any given moment. And having the North Node move into my first house and sign a contract, I guess it made me feel, at least, like I'd succeeded in establishing myself as a musician when I signed said contract. In other words, the universe is pointing directly at you, who you are, what you represent, how you show up in any given moment. Now, this has almost everything to do with the position of Saturn. Saturn rules Aquarius. Now, in my natal chart, my Saturn is in the 10th house of career. So when the North Node moved into that first house, I signed a contract that was related to my career, to my profession. In other words, the North Node will activate the ruler of Aquarius. So where is Saturn in your natal chart? The first house also represents brand new beginnings. Now, the North Node in particular is an instinct towards momentum, and it can be very unfamiliar yet very rewarding. As opposed to the South Node in the seventh house in Leo for an Aquarius rising. This is more like trying to incinerate anything that hasn't worked for you in the past. It's asking you to let go of your comfort zone or your coping mechanisms. With regard to the seventh house, it's time to be a little more discerning about who you give your time to and who you prioritize, who you want to bond to, connect to, have negotiations with, have agreements with, commit to, basically. Now, funnily enough, Jupiter's moving through Leo at the same time, so that's asking you to expand the meaning, because Jupiter represents meaning, not just luck, not just opportunity, but the narrative, the meaning of these relationships. And so there's somewhat of a spotlight in Leo for you to really pay close attention to who you're collaborating with, who you're committing to, who you're bonding with, etc., etc. The South Node will audit the relationships, commitments, agreements in your life that are no longer serving you. So that may mean that over the next 18 months, you let go of some people. And the reverse is true. Some people might need to let go of you. And that might ask you to surrender your comfort zone, your relationship with this particular person. Now, funnily enough, we never really lose our comfort zone. We just invest it in a different area. And so we find our comfort in a different place. And in this case, it's your first house. It's you, the self-definition of your identity. Now, it really couldn't get much more literal. We have Pluto moving through your first house. It's just had an opposition with that Jupiter. So there's even parts of you that you're letting go, old versions of you that are no longer suitable for the next phase of your life. Now, the seventh house is a great place for shadow work because we project an aspect of ourselves into the relationship. They can see things in us that we don't necessarily identify with. Having a Leo seventh house can sometimes mean that although you don't identify with it, you can be rather performative with your relationships. The South Node wants to strip away that performative persona in relationships and actually deepen the meaning of said relationships by showing up as you, unapologetic, unmodified, potentially a little bit quirky. After all, Aquarius isn't exactly the normie. There's an underlying kind of energetic signature of feeling like you're the black sheep, feeling like you're outside looking in. And it's time to really embody your unique nature. In other words, it's not about grand gestures being recognized or validated by others. It's about being you. Ultimately, Aquarius is about your independence and looking at established patterns of relationships, recognizing the decay, and actually being a little more progressive with it. You know, being more honest and authentic with yourself when it comes to the people you want to relate to and ultimately the person you want to be. Now, Saturn rules Aquarius, as I said, and transiting Saturn is currently in your third house of Aries. Now, Aquarius isn't just about being independent. It's also very much about community. And this third house is your local community, your local environment. It also represents your relationship with siblings and extended family. Now, again, because the third house is about your locality, your local environment, it can be your neighbors, it can be your neighborhood, it can be your suburb, it can be the local council, the infrastructure of the local council. It can also be short distance travel, therefore your vehicle. But more than anything, it's the settings of your mind and what you've normalized in your thinking and your thought process every day. How you generate a thought in your head and how you actually communicate that to people in your local environment. Now, the third house is also representative of, texting people, emailing people, that sort of thing as well. How you're communicating. And ultimately what your message is and how you frame that message to others. Now, Saturn in Aries is very impatient. It's a little bit anxious. Aries is like having your foot on the gas and Saturn is like having your foot on the brake. So with transiting Saturn in your third house, clearly there are some very important relationships that you need to be very honest about. And you need to have conversations. You need to communicate your perspective, your position very clearly to them. And this might play out over the next 18 months. Just saying. Think about Saturn in Aries like the settings of the mind, how you solve your problems in your mind and what you've normalized, that thought process that you've normalized every day. So what have you normalized when it comes to communicating with your nearest and dearest, those important relationships, romantic, business, platonic, or otherwise? Saturn in the third house is almost demanding you find the right words so you can have the conversation that you've probably been putting off for some time. Another way of looking at Saturn in the third house, some of you will be working on establishing yourself in a new community. Perhaps you just moved there, or perhaps you've moved closer to a sibling or extended family and you're deepening the relationships with those people. Maybe you want to ask for a commitment from your relationship, or maybe you just need to restructure that relationship. But again, it's going to come down to very important conversations that play out over the next 18 months. Being an Aquarius rising with Saturn currently in your third house, you're someone that sees things differently. You're someone that thinks very differently. So you might have to let go of the idea as the South Node moves through your seventh house of Leo, that everyone is going to understand perfectly who you are, what you mean, and where you're headed. You don't necessarily need to justify or prove yourself in this time. Whilst at the same time, Saturn is asking for real effort to get your message right, to give you the best chance to be understood. Now, as a thank you for watching this entire video, please feel free to send me a DM. I'll send you a coupon code for 30 Australian dollars off my natal and birth chart readings exclusively for new clients. I only love positive vibes always. Hope that helps. Okay, bye.